We're going to be creating REST API, and there are quite a bit of frameworks out there, such as Django and Flask, which are both for Python, Express, which is a popular framework for Node.js. The one we'll be using is Spring Boot, which is one of the most popular frameworks for REST API development, and the programming language for it is Java. It comes packaged with built-in servers such as Tomcat or Jetty, so we don't have to run or set up any server ourselves. And it also has a lot of support in the community, which always makes it easy when programming in it. So Spring Boot comes with Spring Initializer that helps us kickstart the project fairly quickly by setting the project structure for us. So in Google, we can just search Spring Initializer. And let's set up our project. So the project we're going to be creating is a Maven project. So Maven is pretty much a build tool, and it also manages dependencies, especially for Java. And the language we're going to be using is Java again. We're going to be using Spring Boot version 3.0. And let's call our group com.gatech.payroll. Let's call our RFAC employee payroll system. We're going to be using Java 17, and let's start adding dependencies. So dependencies are pretty much libraries that we're going to need in our project, so let's start adding them. So we're going to add this dev tool just to make our local development easy for us. Lombok is another one we're going to need. So this basically, instead of writing getters and setters and overriding the equals and hash code method, we can easily do that by using annotations. So we're going to need this. This is the biggest one we need, Spring Web. So for writing RESTful APIs, we need this library, and it also comes packaged with Apache Tomcat server as well. Another one we're going to need is for Spring Security. So since we're adding authentication and authorization, we need to add this. We're going to be interacting with our database. So there's two libraries for that. We have Spring Data JPA and JDBC. With Spring JDBC, we basically have to write SQL queries ourselves to interact with the database. And with Spring JPA, it utilizes object-oriented semantics, and it gives us the option to write SQL queries as well. The biggest benefit for Spring JPA is we can easily plug in any database we want without changing the code. And we'll see an example of that in the video, where we're going to be using at first built-in in-memory database called H2, and later we'll swap that with MySQL. So let's add this library, JPA. So now we need to add the database libraries. So the first one we're going to be using is H2 database. This is the in-memory database for Java. So let's use this. And later, when we're going to be swapping it with MySQL database, let's add the JDBC connector for that. So we have the driver here. So these are pretty much the libraries or the dependencies we need for our project to get started. So let's generate this. All right, it's generated. Actually, one more library that I would like to add is an Actuator endpoint. So this is a very neat library. It basically allows us to monitor our application and also manage it. So let's add this. And let's just regenerate the project again. All right. Okay, so we got our employee payroll system here. So let's load this up in IntelliJ. So we're going to go File, Open, and just head over to that directory. And we're going to click this POM XML. So this will automatically load up the project and also download all the dependencies for us. We're good to go. So we can see if you head over to main, we got our application up here. And we can actually run this. So if I click run, so it actually started our application for us. And it's running on port 8080. And we can actually go here. So if you go to localhost, and if you go to the Actuator endpoint, this will actually tell us if our service is up and running. All right, there you go. So our service is up and running. We can see it here. Okay, so one of the applications that we're going to install is Postman. It allows us to build and test our REST APIs in a very easy and manageable way. So let's install that. So let's just type in Postman, and let's just head over to download Postman. And since I'm using Windows, I'm going to install the Windows installer. Okay, so Postman is installed, and we can actually test out this API. So if you go to new, HTTP request, and let's just type in the Actuator endpoint. All right, so we got our application here. So Postman is very useful when we're developing APIs, and when we need to show how our APIs work, we can use Postman to document it. Here, I can create a collection, and let me just call this employee payroll. And in this payroll, I can add, let's just say, I can add this endpoint. So I can say save this to here, and people can test out our endpoints, how it works. So I can actually rename this to health endpoint test. All right, now we're ready to start our project.